All right, well, good afternoon and welcome to our Veterans Day program, and a very special welcome to all the veterans that are here today. On behalf of all of us at Friendship Village, we are honored and humbled by the sacrifices that you have made for all of us, and we thank you for your service. It is my pleasure today to introduce our guest speaker, Colonel Tom Robertson. Tom is retired from the U.S. Army with 26 years of active service and another 15 years of service working with the Army Secretariat and the Army staff as a civilian contractor. His presentation today will cover the beginnings of Veterans Day, the missing man's table, preview of a letter to be read at the reunion of the 5th Battalion, 7th Cavalry Regiment reunion that night in Washington, D.C., and his views and thoughts from inside the Pentagon on 9/11. He was there. Please join me in welcoming Colonel Tom Robertson.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Janine. It's a great honor to be here today. Great day to be alive. And if you're going to be alive on Veterans Day, you ought to just spend it with veterans. You can't think, you know, that was an impressive list that just went through with all the names where the people were. We're going to get that straight in a minute. Can everybody hear me over there? Yeah? Okay. Very good. We're going to get started in a minute, but I want to introduce a couple of people first. The first person is my wife. Okay. I've been around the military for 41 years. Well, she's been with me about 35 of those years. And you know, when you're in the military, you don't get a choice of where your assignments are going to be. So she kind of followed me around, got to live in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, got to wear all the Arabian stuff, but she also got to live in Brussels, Belgium for a few years. But she did get to pick the last assignment, and she picked Grove City, Ohio. One thing I probably didn't mention is that I grew up in Alabama. I went to the University of Alabama. I came on active duty as a graduate of the ROTC program there. So, you know, that was a little bit of a transition from Alabama to Ohio. But that just leads me to introducing two other people sitting right behind her. Now, you probably know these people, Dr. Roger Trent and Margaret, great Ohioans. They have introduced me to the fantastic restaurants you've got here. Good food, really good food. But they also had a challenge. When I first met them, we had to come to some agreement between the Ohio State football team and the Alabama football team. So over the years, I got to tell you, over the years, I learned how to watch Ohio State football because we'd come here if we lived in the States over Thanksgiving weekend usually. Well, Ohio State played that team up north. Well, Alabama played Auburn that same weekend. So we all watched a lot of football, but I learned how to watch it. And so I just want to thank them. I am a Buckeyes fan, 100%, with the exception of that one game that I just got a pull for Alabama. So I appreciate them teaching me. I appreciate their patience and their support over the years. So thank you very much. Now, this amount of time in the military, I'm a lot better at giving a briefing than I am a speech. So you're going to see some kind of combination of the two here today because you're going to get a little bit of both. But before I do that, I need to get a sense of who we got here. Okay? So let's recognize, I want to recognize the veterans, but I want to do it in two different ways. And you don't have to stand, just raise your hand. How many Army veterans do we have here? Army? Ooh, okay. How about Navy? There's a few, there's a few. Okay, Marines. Cool. We probably got more out there somewhere and they just won't admit. Navy, Air Force. A lot of Air Force. Okay, fantastic. Coast Guard. Very good. Did I leave anybody out? Did I get all the services? Okay, now let's do this a different way. How many were World War II, Korean War era? I'm not. Korean War, World War II? Yes, yes. Okay, how about Vietnam? Fantastic. How about after Vietnam, since Vietnam? Very good, very good. I just wanted to get a sense of that. One last recognition. Do we have any Gold Star mothers here today? We have one that lives here. Congratulations. Families are so important, both to veterans and to the soldiers. They gave me all kind of electronic gadgets today, so I couldn't be dangerous here. Okay, if you're going to give a briefing, if you got a speech, you got to have some objectives. Well, the objectives this afternoon for me, honor all the veterans, but particularly the folks that are gathered here today. Remember the fallen. We ought to do that all the time. And I hope you leave here being a little bit more proud of the service that you're in, and I hope you feel good about being here today. So that's what we're going to do. I don't know how many of you ever have heard of that. You know, tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. Yeah. I came on active duty in 1973, and this old sergeant, now old is relative because he was probably in his late 30s or early 40s, but he was trying to teach a bunch of second lieutenants how to give a briefing. I don't remember what all he told us, but I remember those words. And I've seen and heard them many times since, but I've always tried to use that in some format here. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. We are going to stand up, for those of us that can, in just a minute, and do the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't do that enough. We really don't. You know, we're not going to get into this. I think it ought to be in schools and classrooms and all that. And I know y'all have a missing man table here in one of your dining rooms. Well, I'd like to do this and just read and go down the significance of each of the items on that table. Take a few minutes to do it. And a lot of this stuff, you've been around, you know a lot of this stuff, just a refresher. Like in the history, the start of the Veterans Day. Thoughts on Vietnam, I want to read this letter. A friend of mine lives in Grove City, but he is giving it to the Association of the 7th Cavalry Regiment tonight in Washington. And he gave me permission to read the letter, and I think it's worth hearing. And you'll be the test audience. You'll be the first people to hear that letter. And then if we got time, and if you're still awake and still interested and hadn't given up the ghost here, we will, I'll tell you a little bit about the day at the Pentagon. I certainly didn't do anything heroic, but I certainly saw a lot of heroes that day. And if we got time, again, I'd love to just sit down and talk one-on-one, questions and answers. We'll do whatever from that time. So, let's get started here. Whoops. If you could stand for those that are able. If not, just stay seated and do it from your seat. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, thank you. Be seated. How long has it been since y'all have done that? Been a while, been a while. Missing man table. This is and I'm going to my piece of paper here because I do think it's important to get this right. Just a couple of quick points. This table has got a POW flag and an American flag on it. There are no more officially POWs, American POWs. So a lot of the table displays have gone to just 2 American flags, and that's fine. But I just wanted to point that out and tell you, I like the idea of keeping it the way it originally started. And this is truly, there's no service that's responsible for the table. It's not a part of the Department of Defense. Started with the troops. Started particularly in Vietnam. And it just, the recognition grew. Right now, a lot of the military dining facilities have the permanent displays. A lot of the public places like this. Old Charlie's in Grove City, the Naval Junior ROTC put out a display in the lobby there. It's just amazing. But what I'm about to read to you, the semblance of each item is done particularly at service balls, official military events. And then quite often when the veterans organizations like VFW, American Legion, have these displays, they'll read this. So to make sure I get the words exactly right, I'm going to read this. This table, set for one, is small, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner alone. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that some are missing from our ranks. The tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. The black napkin represents the sorrow of captivity. The single red rose in the vase signifies the blood that many have shed to ensure the freedom of the United States of America. The rose also reminds us of the family and friends of our missing comrades who kept the faith, awaiting their return. The yellow ribbon and the vase represent the yellow ribbons worn on the lapels of the thousands who demand a proper accounting of our comrades who are not among us today. A slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of their bitter fate. The salt sprinkled on the plate reminds us of the countless fallen tears of the families as they wait. The glass is inverted because they cannot toast us with us today. The chair is empty because they're not here. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope that lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors, to the open arms of a grateful nation. Thank you for letting me read that. That's, I think, very significant. I have lost my clicker. Okay, missing in action. Don't worry, we're not going to have a test on the numbers, but you can see, like from World War II, still 72,000 missing in action. Vietnam, 1,500. Korea, 6,500. Total of just over 80,000 military listed as missing in action today. Now, this is the folks that are in charge of doing this right now. Was only formed in 2015, so that's what, 6 years ago? I mean, somebody's been working on this up to now, but a new agency took over in 2015, and that's the Defense POWMIA Accounting Agency. And they merged with the Air Force's Life Sciences Lab. They merged with the Joint POWMIA Accounting Command and so forth. And these folks, whether you believe it or not, are still active. I mean, we're still getting remains from Vietnam, still getting remains from Korea. Found it interesting, from the Gulf War, there's still 5 unaccounted for people. That's, that one still surprises me. But just thought I'd mention that, plus the fact no current POWs are listed right now. So that's pretty much where I wanted to go with that. Another thing, just to refresh your memory, and I bet everybody knows this that's sitting out here today, and that's the difference in Veterans Day and Memorial Day. If you go ask this same question to folks under 30, there's a knowledge gap there, I'll put it that way. But Veterans Day is just a day like today to pay tribute to all the veterans. Didn't have to serve in combat, didn't have to get wounded, didn't have to die. That's a good thing. It's just to recognize and support the veterans, just everybody. Memorial Day honors those service members who died or were wounded while in service of their country. Just a memory refresher. And this next thing is going to be a memory refresher for you too. 11th hour, 11th day, 11th month. Okay, that's what started the armistice, or that's when the armistice to end World War I began. That's when the fighting stopped. That was in 1918, 1919. President Wilson said officially, yep, the 11th is Armistice Day. Didn't do anything for 17 years, moving on up to 1938. And that's when Armistice Day became a legal holiday. Then kept moving on to 1954. So we do something about every 20 years here. And that's when Armistice Day shifted to Veterans Day. 54, Congress amended the declaration they passed in 38 and made it officially Veterans Day, made it a legal holiday. Then somebody had the bright idea in 1968 to put this on Mondays as part of the the Monday holiday bill or uniform holiday bill. Well, that didn't last long. That lasted about, what did it last? 7 years. President Ford put it back on the 11th of November, and it still is on the 11th of November. So that is your legislative history lesson of Veterans Day today. And when I was going back and reviewing the history of Veterans Day, think about it's only been around for right at 100 years. I always thought, you know, when I got in the Army as a young lieutenant, never thought about them. I figured, okay, we had honored the Revolutionary War veterans, Spanish-American War, War of 1812, Civil War. I guess we just, you know, just didn't say a thing or do anything for them. But at least in 1919, we started it, and it's taken us 100 years. But been on the right track, trying to do better for 100 years with that. So, one last thing, one last point, and you don't try to read the numbers up here. I throw this chart up just to show that Ohio is in that group of states with the largest veteran population. To be in the largest veteran population, 700,000 to 1.6 million veterans. Ohio falls in there. Now, if you go ask the VA here in Ohio, they'll give you a different number every day because it probably does change every day. But it's around, I think, around 812, 813,000, something like that in Ohio. So that's a large number. Texas, California, Florida, Pennsylvania, Illinois, New York, North Carolina, Virginia, are the other states in that large category. But I think we help make Ohio a better state because we're here. So it's, you know, you just can't, you know, you can't do it without veterans. Right? So, okay. I'm doing good on time, so we're doing fine. Told you I wanted to read you a letter about Vietnam. And I'm going to read the letter, but let me tell you how I got to this point. When Sharon and I moved to Grove City in 2016, we had 2 dogs. Well, I get to walk the dogs. So I got 5 o'clock in the morning, noontime, in the evening, and I'd go down the road, and I saw this guy's car, particularly the first few months we moved there. And on his tag for his car, he had a Purple Heart emblem on it. So, okay. So one day, I was out there, and we got to talking. I said, I see you got a Purple Heart tag. He said, yeah. He said, yeah, I was in Vietnam for a couple of years, got wounded, and so they let me do this tag. I said, okay. And I didn't push it, but over time, we got to know each other. And this guy was part of the 5th Battalion, 7th Cavalry Regiment, 101st at the time Air Mobile Division. They saw some of the toughest combat that there was in Vietnam, particularly 1966 to 1967. So anyway, I wanted this guy here with me today. I think you would just absolutely love him. His name is Bill Purdy. After he got wounded in Vietnam, the Army discharged him. He got out, went to work, raised a family, got his whole family here in the area. Bill, to me, is just the epitome of a veteran. I mean, just served his country, didn't avoid duty, got drafted, and he's just the epitome of a veteran. Great American. And so that's why I wanted him here with me today. Well, Bill said, well, I can't do it on the 11th. He said, I'd love to be there. He said, but I've got to go to our reunion. And I said, what reunion? He said, well, 5th Battalion, 7th Cav has an association. And this association, what he didn't tell me is he started the association. He said this association has their reunion on Veterans Day usually in the D.C. area. So I said, well, I tell you what, Bill, you give me some notes of what you would like to hear if you had to listen to me. So, went on a couple of weeks, nothing happened. Then I walked in our house one day, and Sharon said, Bill dropped this off for you. So I go over there and I start looking at it. This is some good stuff here. So anyway, what I want to, then I called Bill and I said, look, one, can I use your name? And two, can I read this letter to the people I'm talking to? He said, well, if you think it's appropriate. Well, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I think it's good. So I'm going to read it. Okay, now these are Bill's words. I call it a letter. He calls it an article. It's not addressed to anybody. He just starts. My reflections of 55 years ago, 1966 through 67. A Vietnam combat veteran remembers the war. From where I offer my opinion and view as a combat veteran with decorations that include the respected and honored Combat Infantry Badge and Purple Heart, I share these feelings. The Vietnam War helped shape a generation of Americans, none more so than the approximately 2.7 million who served in Southeast Asia. Americans should know that those of us who fought in Vietnam answered our nation's call, and most of us served with honor and distinction. Approximately half of us were draftees, mostly just out of high school, at approximately 19 years of age. I was put in a position of combat, mortal warfare, where soldiers on both sides were dying around you, but I couldn't legally drink alcohol at home. The aforementioned establishes where my beliefs come from. One of the most vivid memories is the loss of so many close friends. When I was drafted, I lived in northern Kentucky, which basically consisted of the two counties of Campbell and Keaton. On my induction day, there were 27 of us from the surrounding communities who were trained together and deployed together to Vietnam. When I left Vietnam via the hospital route, there were 20 of our original group left. Now, I'll break right here. That's 25% death rate. Not casualty rate, death rate, 25%. In 1992, myself and Jasper Canzaro, a member of a different company in our battalion, established a reunion and a permanent association entitled the 5th Battalion, 7th Cav Association. The association has held 14 reunions since its inception throughout the United States and conducts military services each Veterans Day in Washington. At the initial reunion, approximately 125 veterans with their wives and significant others attended. At the most recent reunion, approximately 650 veterans' wives and others attended and had the opportunity to renew old friendships. This is what I think Americans who served in Vietnam should know, and what I believe Americans should know. Vietnam veterans served with as much sacrifice as any in American history. The men and women who served in Vietnam were as important as any veterans who ever served. Those who did not come back alive made as great a sacrifice as any who died in any other major war or battle. The grief and sorrow of their families was as profound as the grief of any family who lost a family member in any other war. For those of us who served in combat, our experiences as soldiers were very similar to the soldiers who fought in other wars. I do not care or want to go into the specifics of various firefights or battles, but since I have retired from my civilian career, my PTSD has significantly increased. Attempting to describe or explain what it was like in a particular firefight or battle is impossible. The only ones who can understand it are the ones who were there and experienced it. And without getting too political, I think Americans should also know this. I think the most important thing about going to war is the decision is made by our political leaders. They have gotten it right some of the time, and not so at other times. World War II and Korea were right on the mark. The Vietnam War, with 58,000 plus killed and 100,000 wounded. And what do we have? Walmart, McDonald's, KFC, and others doing business in the very spots that witnessed horrible battles. Don't forget our shirts and blouses have been stamped with the words "Made in Vietnam." We as a nation could have achieved this without all the loss. I further believe that those making the decision to go to war should have served in the military in a wartime position. In addition, the politicians starting the war, their family members, should physically have to serve in the military during the war. There should always be a clear strategy of how to end the war. We seem to have a problem doing this recently. My conclusion is yes, it was totally right to pursue bin Laden, to extract the justice as we did. But in war, too many lives are lost on both sides. In our case, they are mostly young people who never enjoy the special blessing of having a mature life or family of their own. All the soldiers who fought the war didn't create the war. They weren't responsible for making the war. If there's really anything we learned from the Vietnam War, is that we hadn't learned anything from the Vietnam War. End of letter. He ends it right there. Now, there's a website, if you care to look it up, called 5th Battalion, 7th Cavalry Association. Look it up. It's interesting. Guess who else was a commander, or who was a commander of that regiment? George Armstrong Custer in the 1800s at Little Bighorn was also that cavalry regiment commander. So it has a long history. So anyway, I hope Bill tonight has a wonderful time at his reunion. He'll read that letter, and there'll be other people too. But anyway, I just wanted to pass that on. So, okay, so what have we done today? We've done the Pledge of Allegiance. We've done the missing man table, looked at the legislative history, had some thoughts on Vietnam. Let's keep moving up to the current time. We'll get closer. Whoops, wrong clicker. How many of you, anybody here ever worked in the Pentagon? Been there? If you're in civilian clothes, it's a fun place to be. I avoided that place like the plague while I was in uniform, because you start at 6 and you can work to 7 or 8, and they couldn't do that to contractors because they wouldn't pay us extra money, so that was okay. But anyway, here's what I want to do. Just kind of set the stage to give you some facts and figures about the Pentagon. You'll find these interesting. Believe me, you'll find it interesting. Tell you how the day began, talk a little bit about how the plane hit, how we got out, and a little bit about the aftermath there. Anybody ever recognize a car like this before? That is a picture of the south parking lot of the Pentagon, 1942-43 time frame. Now, here's an interesting fact. Construction on the Pentagon started on September 11th, 1941. 60 days exactly to the day the plane hit on 2001. 60 days. Now, the other amazing thing is they finished construction of that Pentagon in 18 months. Started in September, then the March of the year after that, they started. So, just some facts and figures here. Pentagon sits on 29 acres. It's got 17 and a half miles of corridor in it. Got 5 stories above ground, 3 stories below ground that I know of. There may be more, but that's what I know about. 3.7 million square feet of office space. Now, I just told you 17 and a half miles of the corridor. One of the other fact sheets they say is you can get from the furthest 2 points of the Pentagon to the opposite end in 10 minutes. Well, after working there for about a year, I decided to test that. So I went down, 3rd floor down. So I was going to make it to the 5th floor on the far side of the building. Now, there's a couple of things you can't do. You can't walk slow. You can't stop and talk to anybody. You got to be moving. But I made it up. And in the center of the courtyard, or the center of the building, is a 5-acre courtyard. I tell you what, the guys that designed this were amazing. But it's a 5-acre courtyard, and I'll show you a picture of it in a minute. So you get up to the ground level, go out that courtyard, go across the area, and then you can go up. And at the time, there weren't escalators, so it was all stairs. I mean, you were climbing. But you can't do that. You got to be moving, but you can get to the furthest 2 points of that building in 10 minutes. And in the 1940s, in World War II, there were close to a little over 40,000 people working in that building. That's a lot of people. When I was there, there was 23 to 26,000 defense-related people. I mean, that's bigger than some towns around here, bigger than a lot of towns around here. And it doesn't feel, but it does. That's the thing. It doesn't feel big. It doesn't feel big. So that's the 1940 version. This is 1998 picture of the Pentagon, and you can. Right there is the courtyard I was talking about, and it's got 5 rings starting A, B, C, D, and E. And then there's 10, that's a corridor right there. This is the south parking lot that you were looking at. Now you can see back behind there, it's just a beautiful place. The Potomac River, the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial over there, downtown D.C. This is the area over here on the left, the helipad where that plane entered the building. This is just an aerial view, and one of the things that you're briefed on is that the latitude and longitude of where that courtyard is in the sighting systems of all the Russian nuclear, not all, but the Russian nuclear missiles. And they'll use that as an aiming point right there in the courtyard. But again, up until that day, it was just a great place to be. Okay, I started work there March 2000, lived about a mile south of there as a contractor, worked for the Army Deputy Chief of Staff for logistics. I was on board about 17 months when the plane hit. And let me tell you one last thing. The Pentagon had started renovation. And the way they do it, they started in 1995, and they were supposed to finish in 2005. They'd take 1/5, Pentagon 5 sides. They'd take one of those 5, pull it out, go in there, get rid of all the old piping and electrical, put in escalators, make it modern. About 2 months before the plane hit, the section I was in got relocated because they were going to go in there and if that section had not been going under renovation, there'd have been at least 3,000 or so people killed that day. It would. I mean, so that was just, one of those fortunate things that happened. And we were so lucky that that had happened. Beautiful day. It was a Tuesday. Beautiful morning, clear skies, clean air. You couldn't get more normal day than 2011. Let me fix it back. We're going to do something. Okay. Start out with that morning. Told you I lived about a mile south of the Pentagon. Walked out, that's where you get the clear skies. And I took a city bus in. Our apartment had a shuttle, but, a city bus was dependable. Go out there, get on the bus. 10 minutes later, I'm getting off the bus. Again, when you cut your grass at your house, how fresh it smells and all that. Well, they had just been cutting the grass that morning. Just the freshest, most beautiful morning it was. Going in, it's about 7:30 or so. Go through the first part of the building, go across the courtyard, go up. We had moved into a renovated section now, go up to the 3rd floor, stop by the coffee shop, get a cup of coffee, go to your desk. What's the first thing you do when you get to your desk? Drink your cup of coffee. Check your emails. So we did that. So talked to a few people about work from Europe. We're waiting on the West Coast to open up. Then we talked to the Far East people that afternoon. So I'm on the phone, and this is about 9:30 or so in the morning, maybe a 9:45. I'm on the phone to a guy from Atlanta. And we talk a little business, and he said, "Hey, did you hear about the planes hitting the Twin Towers?" And I said, "No." I said, "We ain't got TVs at our desk. We're at work." And he said, "Well," and about that time, phone went dead. Building started shaking. Lights went out. Fire alarm came on. And all this is happening within about, 10 seconds or so. Looked up, and the room that we worked in be about from that door to that wall over there. And I heard this, or we saw, you could see like through that window, a big fireball. No smoke, but a fireball coming up. And then I heard Kim Richards, who was a rather large lady in a row of about 10 desks, said, "Get out of here." So we all got up. Okay, this is more than a fire drill. We knew that. We didn't have a clue what had happened. Didn't have a clue. Figured a boiler had blown up or something like that in the basement. That's all we could think of. But everybody got up. The lights are off now, so you still kind of make your way out. So we get out, and there's another 500 people probably in our corridor. Well, we get out there, and everybody's standing there. Nobody's moving. And guess what? The fire doors have closed. The metal door has closed over the corridor. So what are we doing? So we're following the exit. Luckily, some smart guys up front got their hands between the metal door and the wall, pushed it back, and so the door's open. So everybody, we're up on the third floor, goes down, crosses the courtyard. Everybody's trying to get to the south parking lot, because that's where you normally come in. Buses and trains let everybody out, big park. Well, we get, with this many people trying to get out at once. But there was no panic. It worked great. And so but here's the hero part that I saw. Couple of them. And these were veterans. These were guys that had some experience in helping people. Once you got outside on the ground, you could tell injured people. Veterans were helping them out. There's a guy that lives up here. He's retired now. Little town in northern Ohio. The airplane passed right over his head because he was sitting out there. He was with the Fort Myer Fire Department. He had a fire truck there waiting on a helicopter to come in. Well, the explosion melted his fire boots. So it's got to be hot to be that tight. And that's some good protective clothing. But I saw him, or didn't see him. He and I have done some presentations together, and he tells about pulling people out of first and second story windows, getting them over, people giving them first aid. But you would have been proud not only of the folks in uniform, but of the veterans that have had experience with the military, just trying to help and just taking care of people that day. So, tell you who else did real well that day. My wife was down at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, with a medical appointment. I got home in an hour because I could walk home. Took her 4 hours to get home because everybody was going south. No transportation, no public transportation, no cell phones. We had a landline so I could call my parents in Alabama and other places. But anyway, she was handing out water to all these people that you could see blood and sweat and all that coming over. So she was taking care of people and did I'm sure people thought she was an angel of mercy that day. The green is where there was structural damage. Fire damage is the orange. And the bluish is water and smoke damage there. That's after the plane's been removed and parts of it. But like I say, supposedly, and I don't know this, we were so lucky because the plane hit on the row of desks. The nose of the plane stopped at the row of desks we were on, and we were in about that corridor up there. So again, just so fortunate. Just same view. That is from FBI security cameras that are across the street in a place called Crystal City. Just happened to be running film that day. It took us I was in a little 15-man section. We had a brigadier general in charge. We were all civilians except for a couple of lieutenant colonels. But anyway, he said, and he was a civilian there in the Pentagon, but he was a brigadier general, and he left for Afghanistan almost immediately because he commanded a Special Forces intelligence team. So he was out of there quick. But you could, it took us 3 days to be back fully operational. But from where we lived, you could see the smoke coming throughout that weekend. Happened on a Tuesday. Sunday, there was still smoke coming. And the smell of the dead bodies. There were 24 people killed in the airplane, and 125 in the building itself. 64, 125, yeah, because there's 189 total dead that day. Which, like I say, if that section hadn't been under renovation and cleaned out, the casualties would have been horrific. So, conclusion, a lot of heroes, a lot of people taking care of people. A lot of them, and they get recognized for that too. You be proud of other veterans, be proud of the uniformed people, and the government civilians. They did pretty good that day. This is just what the Pentagon looks like now. A lot of the injuries were caused from glass coming out of the windows. I think windows now cost like $10,000 each to put in, because they're blast resistant. And in most places, they also have to be outfitted to preclude from electronic surveillance going in there. Now this is a different view. You're looking at it from the Washington side looking out. Over on the right side, they've got a beautiful memorial. You can't see it now, but it recognizes the people that died there that day. So if you ever get a chance, it's worth seeing. Let's see. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes what I wanted to talk to you about. I have taken way too much of your time. I think about 55 minutes here. But I'm more than willing to take any questions about anything. I don't care. You know, I'd rather pull up a chair and sit down here and just talk. So, anybody got any questions? No? Well, this concludes my brief. Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question, but I remember when World War II was over, and I said to my father, well, we won, didn't we? He said, well, yes, I guess you could say so, but in war, everyone loses. In war, everyone loses.
Yeah, I think you're right. If you get there, if you get that far, I think you're probably right. Anybody else? I tell you, hey, thank you for letting me be here today. And I really enjoyed this. Janine? Yes, ma'am. Oh, she is. She is.
Well, I want to thank Colonel Robertson today for his briefing and his story. And also I want to make a couple of announcements. First of all, I want to thank Pat Deach for compiling all the veteran photos that you saw coming in, and thank Mikey for making a music video of those pictures. So I wanted to let you know that you can see that video again on Channel 51 today at 4 o'clock and also 7:30 this evening. And I also want to mention the honor flight. I know several of you have taken advantage of the honor flight and had such great experiences. I know my dad really enjoyed it. So Dick Getz is here today. Where are you, Dick? Dick Getz is here for anyone that might be interested. If you haven't had an opportunity to go on the honor flight and are interested, please see Dick. He's got some applications, and I believe he told me when he came in that we have somebody that's lined up to go when they go again. So we'd love to have more of you take advantage of that. So see Dick if you're interested. Thank you for joining us today. Happy Veterans Day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.